Act 4 picks up 3 months after the courtroom chaos of Act 3. It is now fall, and the curtain rises on the Salem jail. Tituba and Sarah Good are suffering from near delirium, calling on the devil to appear and bring them home. Danforth and Judge Hathorne enter. A nervous Reverend Parris tells the judges that Reverend Hale has returned to Salem and has nearly succeeded in getting some of the prisoners to confess their crimes and save their lives. Rebecca Nurse, Martha Corey, and John Proctor are scheduled to hang at dawn. Panicked, Parris admits to Danforth that 3 days prior, his niece, Abigail Williams, broke into his safe, stole every penny he had, and fled with Mercy Lewis. Parris believes the girls are headed for a sailing ship, too frightened to stay in Salem. The news from nearby Andover tells a tale of rebellion. It seems the residents of Andover turned on their court of witchcraft and threw out its judges. Parris is convinced that his life is in danger after discovering a dagger stuck in his door, and recommends that postponing executions might help avoid a scene of rebellion in Salem. To Danforth, postponing the executions would be tantamount to an admission of failure. 12 are already hanged, 7 more will hang at dawn. And, as Danforth assures Parris, he would hang 10,000 that dared to rise against their law. Reverend Hale enters and also counsels postponement, arguing that delaying the hangings will show mercy, not weakness. Hale says that he has talked to every prisoner except John Proctor, who is chained in the dungeon. Danforth orders that Elizabeth Proctor be summoned so that she may try and convince her husband to confess. Hale accuses Danforth of tempting rebellion with his uncompromising ways. The community is in chaos, Hale says. Orphans wander from house to house. Cattle are abandoned, crops are rotting, and every citizen is terrified that he will be accused next. Hale is plagued with guilt and haunted by what he says is blood on his hands. The first scene of Act 4 serves to reveal how the community of Salem has been destroyed by the witch hunt. 12 people have already been executed. 7 more are scheduled to die on the gallows in the morning. Reverend Hale has returned to Salem, and his role reversal is complete. Hale first came with the best intentions, carrying great big books and an eagerness to fight with the devil. Now he's haunted by guilt and feels there's blood on his hands. It's not truth he's after now. In fact, it's just the opposite. Hale is trying to convince the prisoners to save themselves with a lie, to confess, and thereby avoid the hangman's rope. Parris, too, is clearly worn out from all of this and expresses hope that some of the prisoners may be close to confessing. Judge Hathorne believes Parris has gone mad. Tituba and Sarah Good have clearly become delusional. They've been in awful prison conditions for so long, they now truly believe they're in cahoots with the devil, calling out to the devil to bring them home. It's interesting to note that for these women, even the devil seems a safe haven, after all the godliness of the trials. And from Hale we hear a tragic account of how the town of Salem has fallen into decay. Clearly, it is only Danforth and Hathorne, representatives of the court, that keep stoking the fires of paranoid conviction. The rest of the community, it seems, has put to rest any talk of witches and spirits. They are too busy trying to clean up the abandoned farms, wandering cattle, and rotting crops. Abigail's disappearance rounds out her freakishly flawed character. She is not just a liar and a murderer anymore, she is also a runaway and a thief. Of course, there is no suggestion that any of this moves Danforth to question Abigail's contributions to the trial. Again, Danforth's self-preservation refuses to let him admit he may have been wrong. He is well aware of the power of perception and believes that to pardon the remaining prisoners would signal a weakness in the divinity of the court. Question 1. What does Parris admit to Danforth about his niece Abigail? That she refuses to leave their home. That she has continued her affair with John Proctor. That she broke into his safe, stole his money, and fled town. That she has made a pact with the devil. Parris admits to Danforth that Abigail broke into his safe, stole his money, and fled town. Question 2. What is the news from the nearby town Andover? The residents have turned on their court of witchcraft. Abigail has been seen there working in a market. The witchcraft there is rampant. Danforth has received a commendation. The residents of Andover have turned on their court of witchcraft and threw out its judges. Question 3. Why won't Danforth pardon the remaining prisoners? Because he truly believes in their guilt. Because it would signal a weakness in the divinity of the court. Because he holds personal grudges against many of the prisoners. Because of his hatred for John Proctor. Judge Danforth won't pardon the remaining prisoners because it would signal a weakness in the divinity of the court. Elizabeth Proctor enters and is informed her husband is to be hanged at sunup. Hale implores Elizabeth to speak with John and convince him to confess, even if it is a lie. Hale believes that God damns a liar less than he that throws his life away for pride. Elizabeth agrees to speak with John, but promises nothing. John Proctor is in chains when he is let in. He has not seen his wife in 3 months, and the couple is nearly overcome with emotion when they are left alone. Elizabeth reveals that over 100 people have confessed to witchcraft, but Rebecca Nurse has resigned herself to die. So too has Martha Corey. Giles Corey avoided hanging by remaining silent, but he didn't avoid execution. Giles would only say, "More weight," as large stones were heaped upon his body until he was pressed to death. John begs Elizabeth to tell him what she would have him do, but Elizabeth refuses to answer. She wants him alive, she says, but insists it is not her place to judge him. John doesn't know whether to confess or remain silent, and says that all he really wants is for Elizabeth to forgive his adultery. Elizabeth believes she cannot forgive John unless he first forgives himself. Elizabeth also admits that she has had her own sins to count. It needs a cold wife, she says, to prompt lechery. Hathorne returns and demands that John make up his mind as the sun is almost up. John responds that he wants his life. Hathorne runs from the room screaming, "He will confess! Proctor will confess!" Proctor is racked with emotion, convinced the lie he is about to tell is another example of his weakness in the face of evil. Elizabeth and John have not seen each other in 3 months. There is a tragic beauty in how the couple manages to make their peace with one another in this scene. John had not spoken with Elizabeth since he publicly announced his guilt, but the very airing of his secret allows him to look forward in his life, and he certainly hopes to do so with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, too, has been transformed. Finally, she has the strength to forgive John, and she even admits that she was partly to blame for his transgression. John wrestles with the decision to confess. Together with Elizabeth, he decides that he will confess and live. Proctor reckons that he is not, like Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse, bound by religious conviction. Instead, he is bound by principle, and knows that if he should hang, the court will feel the burden of guilt, knowing that they have let an innocent man die. John is tormented by the decision because he believes it is evil to lie, but he also believes that his former lechery precludes him from ever again being a saintly figure. So, he reasons, his confession will be nothing more than another sin from an already fallen sinner.